Hello everybody, happy Monday. We are going live today with Michali to answer a question that was asked on the AMA. We're just going to wait for some of you to join and for Michali, of course. Hey Michali, I see you.
Hi.
Hey
Nice to see
Michali, let me
you.
just move it 1 second. And I have to make my volume louder. So good to
Happy
see you.
Monday.
Happy Monday. All right. Okay, let's
I
get right to it.
do.
You have a question in front of you.
So the
Amazing, thank you.
question says, I've been having a hard time with religious obligations, mostly sticking to the basics, to things that are easy enough and or important enough. But beyond that, my motivation is shot. How can I approach Pesach and sit through the long Pesach Seder without going out of my mind?
Yes, really good question. First I was thinking that we didn't have a question that had to do with Pesach. I got so many questions that didn't have to do with Pesach. And then I was like, we have to find something that has to do with Pesach. And then this came up and I was like, this is a good one. This is like spirituality, religion. I think many people struggle with that. And I think, people are just so busy with other things for Pesach that they don't even think about this part. And I think it's so commendable that this person actually is thinking about this at this early stage in the game, it's still a week and a half, 2 weeks before. And to already be thinking about the spirituality piece is really beautiful. So I thought this is a perfect question for us to address. With that, I will get my first.
Okay. So, as a mental health professional, whenever I talk to clients or any person really about religiosity or spirituality, I have to take a mental health lens. I cannot take a religious lens because I view that as being unethical. I can't put my own personal values onto other people. So I have to work with where the person is at. And so as usual, I would have a lot of follow-up questions like, where is this person's baseline? How did this person grow up? What's their environment like? When they're sitting at that long Pesach Seder, who's around them? What are the expectations they have from other people and also expectations they have from themselves? What shot their motivation? And what are their goals religiously and spiritually? That last question will very much inform where I go from here, because if a person's goal is to get comfortable with where they are currently at, that is a very different conversation than if their goal is, I'm not comfortable with where I'm at and I actually want something different for myself, whether it's more or less, so it's, I have to kind of leave the answer a little vague just because there's so many details that I would need in order to best answer the question.
Interesting. I thought that, I totally hear that, everything that you said, I don't disagree with. I thought, from the way I always read into questions, and that's just what I do, and I kind of go with it. I'm like, this is what my intuition is telling me, and I kind of use it as a way of trusting my intuition and just going with it. To me, it sounded like the questioner was saying that they want to be more connected, and that's kind of so in my mind, I was like, let's go with that, because I think that's beautiful, and I always like to think positively if I can. And that was how I heard the question, I'm struggling on so many levels religiously. How am I going to get through the Seder? I don't know why. I just thought that, if that's their question, they want to be more connected. And
it's so
that
funny
was kind of
because
how
I was reading it as
spinning.
I have to come and show up, but I don't necessarily want to, but I have to. So give me some survival techniques, But we can answer both versions of whatever stories we're telling ourselves.
Let's go for that. So I actually came up with a few things that I think would be so
Okay,
beautiful,
so
as a way to connect. So someone
okay.
actually DM'd us. Yeah, this is how you want to connect. Someone DM'd about a Pesach Haggadah, that there are these different versions of Haggadahs about that are for Pesach. I believe Barry Mitzman puts out one, but then there was someone else that DM'd us that just said get a good Haggadah that inspires you or that's your type. And then somebody else emailed me to OK Clarity and said we're putting together this Haggadah. that has to do with like
Wow.
DBT and stuff like that, that like connecting to Pesach, and they wanted me to contribute, and I didn't have the bandwidth at that time, but I thought it was like an incredible idea. So this is like a not paid sponsor shout out to
That's
that
really cool.
person, and if they're hearing this, they can share like the details, and I would share it on this on our platform. I think that's like a nice thing to, a nice way to like, so I think sometimes something tangible helps you connect. Another thing I was thinking is like relationships ebb and flow, and like our relationship with God is a relationship, and to not beat yourself up for not feeling or having the emotions or the feelings that you think you should be having or that other people are having. That was kind of like my initial thought actually before I got the DM about the Haggadah. Another thought I had was connect. I actually wrote like some notes down. Connect to whatever part of like the Pesach that you can. Meaning like even if it's not Pesach itself, but it's like the nice weather. I'm so appreciative of this, like gratitude for the nice weather. Being with maybe a family member that you do like. Being with having off time from work. So like I think that there are so many parts, or maybe hopefully there's at least one or two things that you can connect to. That maybe there's a favorite food that you have. Maybe it's baking or cooking or something that the holiday brings out that you do connect to, and not to obsess about whether this is spirituality, whether I feel love to Hashem, whether I don't, like just to connect to whatever joy or whatever mindfulness like you can. And then I was actually in the car with my mom when I was choosing this question. I saw this question like a terrible driver where like by red lights I try to respond to the AMAs, and I read the question, and she's like, well, that's a good question. And her thought was, connect to someone who is connected more spiritually. Like, is there somebody at the Seder or in your family that is more spiritually connected? And you can, like, by being close to them, you're kind of like tapping into that spirituality, not to measure yourself against them, not to feel like you need to have that spirituality, but to just be by connecting to them, you're connecting spiritually as well.
Those are
So
all
I thought
really
that was like
great
really,
tips.
really smart.
I
I was like,
love those tips, and I think that they can each one is super powerful, and all of them together are super powerful when it comes to creating more inspiration and like spirituality for the holiday. I think it's super powerful. Um, I also think why
no,
I know they were like really on
I
time.
want to do that.
I was just gonna also say like, to and this kind of like goes with both, the version of the question that you're hearing and the version of the question that I'm hearing, um, is like to kind of like flip the goal, right? So the goal is, how do I not go out of my mind? Um, and and so I'm gonna just be like totally therapist-y for a minute and like analyze that sentence, even though I'm sure this person did not intend for this to happen. So if you're trying to go out of your mind, right? If you're worried that you're going to go out of your mind, that means that whatever is happening right in front of you in your present moment is way too overwhelming and too much, that you're anticipating your brain's going to check out or lose itself, right? And so then the question, if we were to flip this to be a more like positively worded question, it would be, how can I stay in my mind with whatever is overwhelming me in my context, right? And so it's less of like a spiritual question and just more, I mean, I guess you can argue that like presence is spirituality, but it's more about being present, right? So there's a few things that we can do. One is how can we make your environment more bearable and less overwhelming, right? I completely agree with you going outside. But I also like taking breaks. Is there like a room in the house that you'll be in for the Siddharim that you can just like get some fresh, air and space away from everybody and all the noise? Also, for some people, speaking of noise, it can feel like a lot, and just from like a sensory overload perspective, it can be helpful just to kind of find yourself in a quiet space, even if it means the bathroom, and just taking some deep breaths in and out. But so there's like the environment piece, but then there's also what can I do just to create more of a sense of calm, or just to give me more of what I need in the present moment. And that's going to vary from person to person based on what works for you. But I think there's no harm in taking as many breaks as you need. I don't know, every person's Seder is like runs, different lengths of time. Like I grew up like our Siddharim lasts till 4 or 5 in the morning, and I know some people, their Siddharim are like chatzos, like that's it, you're done. So I think it's gonna, you know, and then there's everything in between. So I think knowing what you're getting into and like preparing accordingly, whether it's snacks or a nap or, you know, kind of like bringing a buddy with you or, you know, getting yourself different like treats or like even just like a cozy blanket or something that's going to kind of calm you down so that you can stay in your mind. And then like some things that you said, like bringing your attention to things that are very pleasant or uplifting, you know, and really focusing on those things can help your mind stay in your head and you're not put in a position where you're losing your mind. So those are just some random
Mm.
thoughts that I have on the topic.
I love that. I absolutely love everything that you shared, and I love the way you like read into that last question. I didn't think it was like overly Freudian. I think it's very smart. It's like it was really smart in the sense of like this person is like anticipating losing their mind on some level and having like, you know, having to leave their minds and not be present and just, you know, hope that the time passes versus how can we help you stay in that moment. I really like that. And yes, I totally highly recommend having like
Yes.
snacks with you if your like Seder goes long, especially like meal start till if it doesn't start till like 1
Yeah.
a.m. or something like that, then you're going to lose your mind and your body's not going to
Yeah.
feel very good.
And
So
also
I like
like, you
that.
know, I think this is the holiday where we spend so much time preparing physically, right? I know like, you know, there's so many like ideas about like chametz represents ego and like all these different things, right? But ultimately, when it comes down to like what you're doing with your hands and your body, you're in like physical prep mode and there's a lot of stuff. And I'm a big believer, especially when it comes to these bigger Yom Tovim, that we need to emotionally and spiritually prepare too with wherever we're at. And so part of that prep work involves anticipating who you're going to be with, what you know about those dynamics, and then giving yourself what you need and figuring out what you can do preemptively, proactively, so that you're set in that way also. So just like we're going to prepare physically, we're also going to prepare in the other realm. So that way we're totally ready for the holiday.
Totally, totally. I absolutely think that's perfect. And I think that even on the physical level, like I think that there's a lot of focus on like the physical preparation that it's kind of like more general. And it's like, oh, I have to cook this, or I have to help my parents with this, or I have to do that. But it's not necessarily like in
Yeah.
tune to your own like emotional needs. So like for example, you might have all the physical things to do that are have nothing to do with yourself. They're just like obligatory or you know, things that you just always do without thinking about it. But then there's also like, okay, what do I need physically? So what do I need emotionally, like you pointed out? And also,
Yeah.
what do I need physically? So like whether that's having the snack like or the blanket that I like or the slippers that I need to feel cozy
Water.
and
Like so many
grounded.
people get super dehydrated like the few days leading up to
Mhm,
Pesach because there are these hot kitchens and koshering, you know, their ovens, which
yeah,
is like super hot, and then they're not drinking water because they're just running. So even just something as basic as drinking water, going to the bathroom when you feel like it, not holding it in the whole day, you know, putting your feet up a little bit if they're
yeah,
bothering you, just like these little things make a big
yeah,
difference.
perfect. I love it,
Thank you
Michali. Thank you
guys.
so much.
We're not,
And
we're not terrible.
really
Today's
late on
not
time. We're
terrible.
good. We're not terrible at
Thank
all.
you.
All righty. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for and
Thank
have a great
you.
rest of the
Thank you.
day.
Bye, Faye. Take care.
Take care.